Hello and welcome to Laughing in a Tent. My name is Sarah and I'll be your host. Today we will be talking about Girlscamp. Girlscamp is a camp run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, in which girls ages 12 and older get together to hike, learn various outdoor skills, spend time together, do games, sing songs, and most importantly, have spiritual teaching and learning about the church and about God, to be more solidified in their testimonies of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I personally went to Girls Camp for many years, and I started when I was 12, and I continued until I was 17. So I'm going to today kind of walk you through the process of what it's like to go to Girls Camp, and some experiences I had while there. I'll be drawing a lot from my own memory, as well as emails, journal entries, and photos that I was able to find in preparation for this video. So first, before the camp even starts, there's some prep that needs to be done. So at least in my ward growing up, so in my congregation, we would do fundraisers usually to prepare for Girls Camp. So obviously the costs of running a camp, especially one that was as cool as ours was, and like we'd sometimes have tubing or like ropes course kind of things. So obviously it would need to be funded. One email I found was mentioning preparation for the fundraiser. And that year we were doing a fiesta themed dinner for the whole congregation and for any friends or neighbors who wanted to come as well. And we had to sell tickets in order to raise money for the camp. And in the email it says, after talking to everyone tonight, most girls had not begun their ticket sales. Our fundraiser will only be as good as how many people we get to attend the fundraiser, so we need to sell tickets in the next few days. You need to have at least 3 sales to qualify for your part of the earned money. I also thought this next part was just interesting. It says, following is a list of ward members who typically attend ward parties who we believe have not been contacted at this point. At which point, they gave a list of ward members who they didn't think had been contacted. And I just thought this was interesting. I don't think it was sent with any malicious intent, and, I have email evidence that I used that list to try to get people to buy tickets. But I just thought it was interesting from an Exmormon perspective now, that, it just seems like a bit of a boundary crossing and encouraging your group to, ask them to buy a ticket.
And I've been thinking about why this bugged me, and I think it's just that there was a list of people sent by a leader who it felt like the leader was consenting on behalf of those people to be contacted. Like, these weren't individuals who had expressed, interest in going to this event specifically. They did say that they had previously gone to events, so that was kind of like assumed as consent to be contacted, which I do appreciate that they were trying to narrow it down that way. But it just seemed kind of weird that, there's this list of people that are kind of expected to come. And when people did say no to me, pretty much the only reason they would say no to me is because they'd already bought a ticket from another young woman. And so it just kind of felt like a situation where if you were a good ward member, you would support the young women and come. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just feels like one of those situations where you can't just say, yeah, I don't really feel like going. But there's kind of some pressure inherent. And so the fact that they gave out this list of people to be contacted, just feels like it put a lot of pressure on the people that we were contacting, because then they're put in a situation without their explicit consent where they're kind of expected to come to an event and pay money towards something that they didn't really sign up for information about. And I don't think they were bothered. This is just kind of how things were done. But I just thought it was interesting, and it kind of stood out as a little bit, unusual to me. But again, let me know in the comments if you think I'm reading way too much into this. But I just thought it was an interesting thing to note.
Another year, we did an Italian-themed dinner. I remember we had cooked pasta and rolls and salad, and the young women were in charge of waiting tables, refilling people's water and getting them more of whatever they needed. And I remember that day being very, very tiring and walking a lot. So they made sure we earned our keep. And for the fundraiser, another part of it was the like desserts auction, or some sort of bake sale or silent auction kind of situation. This one particular year, we had an auction with bigger treats, as well as a smaller treat table where people could buy like an individual cupcake or some other like packaged good or something. And for that year, I and my friend baked a cake. And so here is a picture of that. My friend and I. So I cropped her out of the picture just for her own privacy. But a friend and I made a cake, and there's a picture of me doing that. And then you can also see here the camp fees. So for this one particular year, it was $130 for the camp fee. Some of the other emails I looked at, I saw prices as low as $80 per girl. And actually I only saw those two. So it's possible it got cheaper, but I just didn't see it in the emails. And of course the fundraisers would help to bring down that cost. So that was something that the ward did to kind of help out. Oh yeah, I totally forgot to mention, when I was 13, the fundraiser we did was a bit unusual. We did trash can power washing. So all these fundraisers are things that are chosen by our leaders. They probably had some input from the girls or the parents, I imagine, but it was usually something we were just notified, like, okay, we'll be doing this, you know. And I think if I didn't want to participate and I wanted to, you know, pay my way some other way, I probably could have. But that was just kind of the activity that everyone was doing to raise money for camp. So we would, like the big trash cans that you like put on the curb for the garbage truck to come pick up, we would like have people sign up and pay for us to come and power wash their trash cans, which is just a funny concept to me. But anyway, we did that. It was as gross as it sounds. And yeah, fun times. But you know, we're with friends, so like it's all right because you can at least hang out with your friends while you're power washing trash cans. Once the fundraiser had been completed, the next thing to do is to gather the priesthood. So the priesthood refers to the male members of the congregation who are ordained to an office of the priesthood. So I've mentioned it briefly in my other video about baby blessings. Feel free to check that out. But the priesthood is essentially like a license to do certain things within the church. So in order to be ordained to the priesthood, a person has to be male, and for the Aaronic priesthood, that's like the lower level, the boy has to be 12 years or older to be ordained to that. And for the Melchizedek priesthood, that's 18 years or older. And before they can be given the priesthood, they have to do a worthiness interview, which is very similar to the interviews that are done for people to enter Mormon temples. So if you Google that, you can find more about it, but it essentially asks if they believe the core tenets of the church and if they are living according to the teachings of the church. So if they pass that interview, then they are able to get what's called the priesthood. And that's considered to be God's power, and it also serves as basically a license for them to serve different functions within the church. Sometimes people just, when referring to adult men in the congregation, they'll just say the priesthood and kind of refer to the men like by that nickname. And in this case, that's what that's referring to. There has been some effort from church leaders to discourage that practice, to differentiate between like the power of the priesthood or kind of that license versus the group of people who holds it. But it's still fairly typical to hear people refer to the priesthood, meaning the group of male congregation members who are adults. So one email I found was seeking men in the congregation who could be present at girls' camp to serve as the priesthood. So there's kind of a few functions of having men at girls' camp. I think a really, really big one is like for security, like safety reasons, and that's something that's explicitly brought up in a later email. And, you know, I have mixed feelings about this. I think it's always good to have more adults to supervise. I think there's an argument that could be had about whether that needs to be men specifically or whether women are just as capable of taking care of the group. But that was just kind of a typical, like, men protect the women is very, very ingrained into Mormon culture. Men are the protectors and providers and presiders. So that's a big function of the priesthood. Another big function is that of presiding. So this is kind of it's sort of like a complicated topic that we can go into later. But there's essentially this idea in the church, which you frequently hear talked about in conjunction with the family, a proclamation to the world, which is a document I really deeply dislike that we will be probably talking about in some later video because it's kind of an important topic to know about. But so that document and also many other teachings from church leaders teach that men are to preside. And that basically means, I've heard the analogy of, like, if you're rowing in a kayak or something, then if you have two people in the boat, like, both need to be rowing, but one person needs to decide on the direction, because if you're both, like, fighting each other, then you're not going to go anywhere. So to preside is to kind of, like, decide on a direction to go, and then everyone else puts in the work to make it happen. And that's kind of how it was explained to me, but it's basically the idea of, like, being the resident authority, like the supervisor, like, not even, like, I guess maybe like a manager. Like, if you're at a store and there's a bunch of people working and there's, like, a problem and they need to refer it to someone higher up, then, like, they'd see your manager. Like, I feel like it's, like, kind of that vibe. In a lot of ways, it's kind of more like performative or like a formality. Like, most of the time, decisions day to day would largely come from the women. But if it was a decision about, like, safety or about, I don't know, so something big, I guess, that, like, would need a major course correction, then it would have to be approved by the bishop usually, or another man who kind of has authority over the girls' camp. And then a third function of the priesthood, so we have kind of security, presiding, and then also like teaching. So the member of the congregation with the most, like, spiritual authority, who has, like, you kind of assume, like, the most direct access to God. There's nuance to that, but I feel like it's a useful shorthand for right now. So the person with the most spiritual authority is the bishop of the congregation. So he serves very similar to a pastor would in another church, but we call him the bishop. And him and his two counselors, so they're kind of like vice bishops. There's, like, 3 of them, but the bishop has the most authority, and then the 2 others are about equal. So the 3 of them form what's called the bishopric, and a member of the bishopric will come to girls' camp usually and will share some sort of spiritual message. It could also be someone from higher up leadership, so, like, the man even above the bishop might also come, or one of his counselors. That triad is called the stake presidency. Sorry, lots of jargon, but just the next local level up might also come and speak to the girls. So at some point during the camp, there will be, like, everyone sits down together and here's a special, like, spiritual message that we've all been waiting for from a member of the bishopric or another priesthood holder. And it kind of serves as, like, the focal point of camp. So although it's a girls' camp, like, the big spiritual, like, central point often involves, if not always involves, a man speaking to all the girls. So you have to find the priesthood. You have to find enough people to guard the teenage girls every night. And one of the emails I found, it said that they wanted to have, like, 2 men available for every night. So once you have your priesthood holders set and ready to go, next thing to do is some more, like, camping type logistics. So first, there's foil packet dinners, or just any sort of camping dinners, but foil packet dinners are really nostalgic for me, so I'll focus on those. I found an email that was talking about how one evening we would go to the church and we would make our foil packet dinners during the weekly activities for teenagers. So there's an event it used to be called Mutual. Now I think they've changed the name to Activities for Youth or something to that effect. It was Mutual when I was a teenager. But you would once a week, I think for me it was usually Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So sometime in the middle of the week, all the teenagers would get together from the congregation and do some sort of activity together to learn more about the church's teachings or to bond as a congregation. And some of those activities would also be dedicated to doing things to prepare for Girls Camp. So that could include making foil dinners, which is really simple. You just get a sheet of foil, and sometimes you put like a frozen chicken breast, or not frozen, just, uncooked raw chicken breast in there. Maybe some frozen tater tots and like some peas, and like maybe mashed potatoes or something. Or actually, I guess the tater tots are potatoes. But you'd put, various like frozen, uncooked foods in there, wrap it up in a little rock, and then when you get to Girls Camp, you make a campfire and you throw it in the fire and let it cook for a long time. And then when you open it up, you have a nice little dinner in your little foil packet. So that was really fun. I remember making those, and it was a good time. It's a nostalgic memory for me. Another thing you'll do before Girls Camp that you also do during Girls Camp is certifications for camp. So we had a Girls Camp manual. It was just this tan spiral-bound book produced by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But anyways, it's produced by the church though. This little, it's pretty big. It's like a manual. It's like this big, like 8.5 by 11, and it's spiral-bound and like tan. Like it looks very 90s, at least when I had it, which was the 2010s. So like definitely not the 90s. But anyway. So it would have a bunch of different kind of survival type things that you had to pass off. So kind of like getting like in Boy Scouts or something, like if you got a patch for something, it was kind of a similar concept with the Girls Camp certification. And so you would learn things about first aid or plants or how to tie knots or whatever. And it was very chill. It wasn't really the focus of Girls Camp at all. But for every year we'd probably do a couple activities that we would get certified in things. I found this in my email, just talking about the certification activity prior to Girls Camp. So it was on a Saturday, and the oldest girls, the youth camp leaders, prepared trainings for all the other girls. So they'd choose a topic. And then everybody went to the church on one day, and all the youth camp leader girls, we'd be in different rooms, and so all the younger girls would cycle through in rotation. So then we'd have I don't remember how much time, probably 15 minutes or something, to teach here's how you do some really basic first aid, and then they'd get that checked off, and then you go to the next station and learn how to do whatever. And get that checked off. So in the email, it was just saying, make sure to arrive at this time, make sure your training is fun and not just 20 minutes of you talking. So I guess it's 20 minutes. And they'll walk through the halls with a bell when it's time to change. I don't know what it is. I just feel like that's kind of nostalgic. I don't know. Was that just the 2010s or whatever? I just feel like people walked around with bells for things. I don't know. Did this happen more than once? I feel like this is pulling up some memory for me. Anyway, and then they also said during the mid-morning break they're going to sing camp songs and play games, and to bring guitar or ukulele if you have one. So that was kind of fun. So prior to Girls Camp, you have to make sure that you do the fundraiser, you pay for the Girls Camp, you do your certification activity, and you get your priesthood holders lined up, and obviously your venue for camping. And then before the week of Girls Camp, you'll be emailed a guide for packing, as long as a bunch of waivers. So the waivers are just kind of what you would expect. Any liability issues with being outside or hiking or tubing or whatever you're doing. And then they also had the packing list. So I wanted to show some interesting parts of the packing list. So for those of you who don't know, Mormonism is definitely pretty steeped in purity culture. So there's a lot of like policing of women's bodies, very, very young even. So this camp is for 12 to 17 or 18-year-olds. And just here's some interesting things from the packing list. So first they have the swimsuit information. So Young Women's Camp is kind of notorious for being kind of crazy about swimsuits. I don't personally have any bad experiences with swimsuits at girls' camp, probably because I had OCD and I was already really policing myself, so I didn't really need my leaders to police me. But you could look up online, and there's tons of examples of other ex-Mormons who have talked about having, kind of traumatic experiences with girls' camp and swimsuits, especially like if they brought a swimsuit that wasn't deemed appropriate and then they were kind of like publicly shamed by having to wear like a huge t-shirt over it or something. There's a lot of those examples out there, so you could find them. So I just wanted to read this document that I found in my email right before girls' camp. So it says, we understand that this can be a very sensitive and sometimes explosive topic of conversation, referring to swimsuits at girls' camp. In order to communicate what is considered appropriate for a young women's camp, please accept this document as a guide for a young women's camp swimwear. All young women must wear a modest one-piece swimsuit or a modest tankini with a top that comes down to the hips. We use the term modest to refer to fit and style, and this does not include bikinis, French cut, very high in the leg styles, or plunging necklines that show off cleavage. Using a t-shirt to cover an inappropriate suit will not be allowed. Also, it's interesting that they say inappropriate, like, I don't know, it's so moralized. Like, it's not just a dress code, it's like, this is morally what you should be wearing, Please remember that modest tankini tops must come to the hips with no bare midriff showing. This can be determined by raising one's arms in the air, and if any stomach shows, the top is not long enough. There are many places that sell swimsuits that are perfect for camp and will last the whole summer. The key to finding an appropriate swimsuit that you love is to start shopping now. Below are examples of swimsuits that are perfect for camp, high enough in the neckline to avoid showing cleavage, no cutouts in the trunk of the suit, not too high cut in the leg, modest in the back, and no midriff showing. I think it's interesting that they say modest in the back, because I remember this just being a constant struggle for me with swimsuits, because a lot of like women's swimsuits like have cutouts in the back. Like it's very, very common. And a lot of them are really, really low cut in the back as well. And that's like something that we were always taught not to wear, at least in daily wear, but there was a bit more flexibility with swimsuits, and it could be really, really hard to find one that didn't have cutouts in the back. So pretty much everyone, would have cutouts in the back. But I was just always agonizing over, like, is the cutout too big or is it too low? And honestly, most of the time, especially in my later teen years, I would just wear a rash guard and completely cover everything. Or, like, a very, very modest, like, tank top swimsuit. But it was just always a question for me that I really struggled with. So I'm kind of frustrated for younger me that they didn't specify exactly what modest in the back meant, because I feel like I would have stressed about that. And then they also put examples of what modest swimsuits look like. Anyway, you'll notice all of these are like one pieces and very, very, very modest. And none of them show the back. So if anyone's wondering what the back should look like, keep wondering.
Also, another question from Editing Sarah is, what do they do if you don't have an appropriate swimsuit? I don't remember an instance where that ever happened, but like, what if a girl came to camp and didn't have a swimsuit that fit this description, or she thought that it was long enough, but it showed just slightly a little bit of midriff and she hadn't noticed? Or what if she thought that the sides of the legs were long enough, but turns out they actually aren't? What are the leaders going to do? They said that they couldn't put a t-shirt over it to make it work. So does the girl just get sent home and like just be embarrassed in front of all of her friends and miss out on this camp opportunity and maybe even lose the money that she paid for girls' camp? Like, what's the long-term plan here? Another thing I didn't really mention is that the reason why a strict dress code is problematic is because it kind of supports that idea that women are in charge of other people's sexuality, and that if women don't dress, quote unquote, modestly, that they are like held responsible for other people's impure thoughts. And this is especially weird when you're at a camp, all of women, where, supposedly the only people who could possibly be tempted by these teenage girls are the adult male congregants, which we hope aren't looking at the teenage girls. But then if they aren't a problem, then like, why are they having to dress so modestly? And you could say, what about the lesbian young women? But in the church, we pretty much pretend that everyone is straight and kind of ignore the fact that that exists. So I don't think that's the main motivation for a dress code like this, but just some interesting thoughts that also other ex-Mormon creators have talked about in length. So if you look up purity culture and just kind of the issues with modesty and policing of women's clothing, that's something that you can learn more about as well, and it's a very interesting discussion that a lot of really smart people have put a lot of hours into explaining, and I've really benefited from learning about their work.
And then there's some other things that I thought were interesting from the packing list. Modest pajamas, I thought was interesting. That even when you're all among women in your tent alone at night, you still have to be modest, which means you have to have your shoulders covered. You can't show any midriff, and your shorts have to go like to the knee. They can't be like shorter than the knee at all. Like anything above like mid-thigh you can like maybe get away with, but like really like the closer to the knee the better. Shirts long enough to cover midriff, one long sleeve, no sleeveless or immodest tops. So yeah, no spaghetti straps, no midriff at all. 2 or 3 pairs of long pants, capris or knee-length shorts, and modest swimsuit. And then I also thought it was interesting that they said to pack your scriptures in a Ziploc bag in case of rain, and your personal progress book. So I haven't really talked about personal progress at all. It's a similar kind of like passing off activities type of thing. So like it's similar to like getting badges, or it's similar to getting like badges or patches or whatever like you would in, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. But it's very, very church focused. So it's like you have several different attributes that you'll do. I'll probably go more in depth in another video. But it's just a lot of teaching about the church, and it has very, very strict gender roles. So it is a lot of like preparing young women to be wives and mothers, and kind of have a lot of like feminine traits and feminine hobbies and skills, or like stereotypically feminine anyway. So yeah, that's what that is. And then, the camp manual, so that's the certifications I already mentioned. And journal. So journaling is also really important in the church. They often tell you to record your spiritual experiences, and I'll probably get more into that later, but it's something that they bring up a lot as well. Yeah, so once you've packed all your stuff you need for camp, it's time to actually go to camp.
Well, that concludes part 1 of our Girls Camp explanation video. So please come back to my channel for part 2, which I'll be posting in probably about a week. And you can hear more about Girls Camp, and it'll also include some camp songs, so be sure not to miss that. And I hope to see you then. If you are interested in supporting me, please check out my Patreon in the description below. And if you could like, comment, or subscribe, that would really help me to be more visible and expand my community, which I would really love, to help people feel like they have a safe space for people who don't know about Mormonism to learn about it, and for people who have been impacted to just kind of feel seen and heard and be able to kind of make sense of their own experiences and relate in any way that they can with the things I bring up. So thank you so much for stopping by, and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.